Right. So, Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon.
Afternoon, Miss.
Good afternoon, Madam.
Good afternoon, Madam.
Right. So, last week you already learned about the three theories of the process on ethical decision making, which is what are they? What are the three processes? The first process, the three process of ethical decision making. What are they? Can you list it down? The three process. Can you tell me what are the three processes? Yeah, good afternoon. Tell me what are the three process that you learned last week? There are three scholars which have three process for ethical decision making. Can you list it down, the three process? Yeah, I'm waiting. Three process. What are the three process or the three theories for the process on ethical decision making? Okay, Svara, ethical triangle. What else? Okay, good. Adriana, Roars, Kupes, and Svaras. Okay, so those are the three. Now, before you learn about that, you actually learn about Kolberg, Kolberg moral development theory. Okay, which way you have three level also or stages also. Okay, now for this week, okay. So before that, this is week 11, and then later in week 13, you're gonna have another. Bukan break lah. It's your class is every Monday, so every Monday memang selalu banyak public holiday. So if I think we need to replace. We need to replace everything lah that we have when you went for your public holiday. Okay. Now, so this is week 11. Excuse me. You have another three chapters to go. Okay, you have another three chapters to go. Chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. Uh, for the few semester already, chapter 6 is not included in your examination. I'm not sure about this semester. The RP hasn't informed us yet, the lecturers. So for today, inshallah, I'm going to cover chapter 6 and chapter 7. Chapter 7 is on good governance. Chapter 6 is on ethical dilemma. Right? So I already update the slides in the Google Drive on chapter 6. You can check that chapter 6. Okay? Shall we start? Can we start?
Yes, madam.
So again, I already put the chapter 6, new slides chapter 6 in the Google Drive. Huh? Right, so this is ethical dilemma. I assume that this chapter will not be included in your examination, so I'm gonna go through it quickly, lah. Okay, quickly, so we can go for chapter 7 because chapter 7 is gonna be included in your exam, lah. Right, so this is the learning outcome. Right. So what is the name? Ethical dilemma. Right. So these are the learning outcomes. At the end of the session for today, you're gonna be able to explain what is ethical dilemma, and then you will able to explain the conflict of interest as well as how to solve the ethical dilemma in public administration. Right. So this one it keeps on. I keep on mentioning this one in your lectures, whereby public administrator, we do. If you take a look at chapter 4 and chapter 5, we do have the discretionary power to decide, and especially the top management. And then for the top management to make the decisions, they need to be given guideline, whereby sometimes we're not given guideline. That's why we are using the RORS process. And then we can also use the Coopers as well as the Svara ethical triangle, whereby Svara ethical triangle is referring to your chapter 2, which is focusing on utilitarianism, focusing on Kant, and focusing on virtuous ethics. Okay, so since we have this discretionary power, but in public administration, not only the top management needs to can have this discretionary power, but also for general administrator or general people who are working for public service. Also, sometimes we do experience this situation whereby we have this discretionary power. Right. So you must remember, in being ethical in public administration, we must have this altruistic motivation, whereby if you are working with the government, your self-interest is no longer important. Your self-interest is no longer important, especially in doing your job. In fact, if you are working for the public service, your uh, annual leave, even your annual leave is not your right. It's actually privilege given to the public service. Okay, it's not part of the rights of public servant. It's in fact privilege given to public servants. So if you are going for your annual leave, but you are needed in the public service, especially if it is emergency or a very big meeting, you have to cancel your annual leave. That's how public servants need. We should have this altruistic motivation. If you remember altruistic motivation, we should put the societies first. We should put the people's needs first rather than our needs in the public service. So that is what ought to be done. Ought to be done by the public service, especially for them to be ethical, for us to be ethical. Okay, and then there will be situation whereby sometimes we have dilemma. We cannot decide whether we choose ourselves or we choose the public service. Or in fact, in public service itself, the government also need to make decision whether they want to solve the issues in the society, or they need to minimize the issues or the problems in the society itself. So that is basically the situation to be ethical in public service. Okay, so what is dilemma? So when we face difficulties, yeah, when we face difficulties in choosing two different things, it means we already face dilemma. Okay, we have two choices and we need to choose one of them. Okay, and both in terms of dilemma, we are able to do both. We can choose to do both, but usually in public service it is hard. So we need to choose one only. Okay, right. So ethical dilemma is whereby an agent of making a choice for the principle between two or more alternatives where good or bad choice is equated with moral values and it serves common good. Okay, so the principle is basically the public administrator lah. Public administrator, we have to choose between two or more. Okay, more alternative, and then at the end of it, we need to choose it based on the best one for the society, which is common good. Okay, so in governing a country or in managing a country, usually the government, they face two types of dilemmas. There are two types of dilemmas in ethical dilemmas in public administration, which is the first one is wicked problem. The second one is tragic choice. Do you know drugs? Drugs problem, subcom or shabu. Shabu, especially in Malaysia, we have this problem of meth, crystal meth, damdo yang biasa yang kamu tengok. Okay, so those are social problems, and social problems need to be resolved by the government. However, in terms of the social problems, usually the government cannot solve it totally. Like drugs problems, so we already been having drugs problem for a very long time already, and the government cannot solve it. Okay, because it is a social problem. Right. So drugs, for example, is part of the dilemmas in government, which we call it as the wicked problem. So wicked problem, it is a problem that is hard or difficult to solve, and then sometimes it is even impossible to solve. Okay. So the reason why is because it has symptoms to other problems, and usually they are unique. Why do you think people take drugs? What are the reasons for people taking drugs? Do you know? Mentally ill to enjoy, good. Mentally ill, testing, stress, release tension, self problem. What else? Those, if you take a look at peer pressure, is it peer pressure? Okay. When you take a look at the situation in KK kan, if you go to Sugama, ada kan tuh yang budak-budak Sabgam no, that's one of the situation lah, the social problem. Why do you think budak-budak di Sabgam? To avoid hunger. Okay, they see others influence surroundings. Okay, that one is when it comes to like family problems. Okay, good, Zainab. Influence of friends, good, Alif. Okay, so you guys know that there are so many reasons why people are taking drugs. There are so many reasons why people are taking drugs. If you remember in chapter 5, whereby in order to solve the problem, we need to solve the root of the problem. Okay, we need to solve the root of the problem. However, you yourself, as you can see here, there are so many answers from you guys, and every each one of you is correct, because the reasons for people taking drugs could be different from one another. Okay, so for those that homeless people, or the what do you call, the stateless people that taking drugs, if you see them, the budak-budak tu kan, the children tu, usually the reason why they are taking drugs because they are having, like, for example, they are hungry, or they are having difficulties in living because they don't have job or whatever it is. So they want to run away from their problems. And this happened also among other peoples that taking drugs because they are stressful or whatever it is. They try to take their mind away from their problems. It goes the same with alcoholic problem lah. All right. So there are so many reasons, and let's go back to chapter 5. Let's go back to chapter 5 in Cooper's ethical decision making, whereby in order to solve the ethical issues in the society or in the organization, we need to go back to the root of the problem. However, as you can see here, drugs problem, we do not have any specific root for the drug problems. So therefore, this kind of problem, we call it as wicked problem. We do not know how to solve it totally because there are so many reasons behind those problems. Okay, it could be different from one another. So therefore, in the wicked problem, the government cannot solve it. So they are having dilemma. However, of course, the social problem in the country needs to be settled by the government. So what the government needs to do is they need to minimize it. Usually for wicked problems such as drugs, the government will try to minimize it by giving awareness, by having rehabilitation center, by having punishment, by having education, by having the police or whatever it is. There are so many agencies, there are so many programs that done by the government, but at the end of it, this wicked problem cannot be solved. That is why it is called a wicked problem. Wicked to jahat lah. It is something that is a problem that is hard to solve. That's why they call it a wicked problem because there are many sources or roots of the one problem itself, which is the drug addict too. There are many roots for it, and we cannot solve it at every root because it is embedded in the society. And if you take a look at this wicked problem itself, uh, other than there are so many roots of the problems, there are so many reasons for the problem, we also have so many consequences of the problem itself. From the drugs itself, we can see that families are broken, they fight with one another. Some people steal, some people kill just for the sake of the drugs itself. So in the wicked problem, the government cannot solve everything. The government cannot solve everything, so therefore they try to find ways to minimize it through the mechanisms that I have mentioned earlier. Okay, agencies, education, awareness. Okay, so that one is wicked problem. It cannot be solved. Right. And then the second one is tragic choice. All right. So this tragic choice is whenever the government, what is that, Rahman? Whenever the government have to make a choice whereby it is between two radically incompatible but equally in that undesirable outcome, that whenever we do in a given situation, we will be in one perspective acting wrongly. This one here it means in tragic choice, the government must make a decision. And sometimes in making that decision, it will cause bad situation to the other uh, situation. Okay, I'm going to give you one example in this tragic choice. Malaysia is known as one of the best public service in terms of hospital. Even though hospital in Malaysia is not as good as Singapore, but in Malaysia we are being given public hospital, which whereby the citizens of Malaysia, including the foreigners, they can use the public facilities in the hospital, and usually the cost of the public hospital it's much lower than any places else in Southeast Asia, especially. So Malaysia is the cheapest, and we have the good technology also if we compare with Indonesia. Okay, if Indonesia and Singapore, if you go there, they will ask for your money first, then you will be given service. But in public hospital in Malaysia, you go there first, and then after you want to check out, baru they're gonna ask you for money. But if you go to Indonesia and Singapore, you need to pay first, then you can use their facilities. So Malaysia, even though we are not that, uh, even though some people might see that public hospitals is not the best option, but it is actually generally is the best option if we compare to the other Southeast Asian country. Right now, in the hospital itself, there are many kind of operations that given by the government, and one of them is the organ donation, organ operation. Okay, so in organ operation too, especially let's say for example you go for heart punya surgery tu kan, jantung tu kan. Okay, now this kind of organ apa dia panggil operation ni, it's actually a tragic choice. The reason why it is a tragic choice is because the government providing us with this kind of services, but not everyone will be able to get that operation for the heart. The reason is because the supply from the government is limited. However, the one that wants to use the service for the heart implant, though there are many of people in Malaysia that needs to have the heart implant, especially those the unfortunate people. Okay, and then the reason why it is a tragic choice is because the government provide these facilities for heart implants, but they know that they do not have enough supply for the heart. And sometimes people have to wait 1 to 2 years, and there will be people that pass away even before the operations for heart implant. That one is tragic choice. So here it means the government provide us with the facility, but it's not enough. So when it is not enough, it will sacrifice some people. Can you understand that? They provide us, but it's not enough. So it's not when it's not enough, people will die. Okay. Another example of Malaysia also, we are a federation, yeah. We are a federation country, federation state. So in our federal constitution, every resources, natural resources, will be pulled to the Putrajaya, which is the federal government. So the responsibilities of the federal government is to redistribute the resources just now. Okay. During the redistributions of the resources, the government did make tragic choice. You see the development in Selangor. Selangor and Penang are the two most developed states in Malaysia. Okay, if you go to Selangor and Penang, they are the richest and the most developed states in Malaysia. Okay, so you take a look at the development in Semenanjung, Malaysia, and you take a look at the development in Sabah. In Sabah, we already been independence more than 60 years. However, okay, in my place, suburban, I think my place is suburban, which is in Putatan. So it could be called as suburban. We are not rural area. So in Putatan alone, we are having this electric problem. Okay, electric is actually essential according to the United Nations. It's for a developing country, it is the essential things. Okay. However, for Sabah, electricity is one of the common things that we are having problem with. It shouldn't happen. But if you go to Selangor, they will be surprised that if they have any electricity problem. In fact, TNB in Selangor and in Sabah, we do have ACSB. ACSB is also privatized. How come the electricity is not as good as Selangor, whilst both are actually privatized? So that one is tragic choice also. And another tragic choice is in terms of housing. Housing, yeah. Housing is a tragic choice because the government approved so many housing development, but those housing development are only what we call okay. So those people that afford to buy those house are not the majority of Malaysian, which is the P40, but it's actually for people in the middle class or the upper class. Meanwhile, according to the United Nations, housing is basic necessity. So that one is tragic choice. They provide us with housing development, but we cannot afford it. They provide us with electricity, but they cannot provide stable electricity that they're supposed to provide. Okay, so that one is tragic choice. It means they give us, but it's not enough. Another one is during Raya or Hari Raya Puasa. Okay, there will be government program whereby they provide you with 500 ringgit. Okay, during Raya, 500 ringgit. But the rest of the year, yeah, 12 months in a year, only 1 month they're gonna give you assistance. So for those people who are unfortunate, okay, in the low income level too, so only Hari Raya, during Hari Raya they will have money to actually buy food, whatever it is. But the rest of the month, which is the 11 month, they are struggling. So that one is strategic choice. Clear? Is that clear? Now, let's proceed to the conflict of interest and ethics in government. Right. So conflict of interest important and must be recognized and controlled to avoid the undermining of fundamental integrity. So here the words is actually integrity. Okay, so whenever the people or the government makes decisions, one of the most important aspect is they need to have this integrity. And if they choose themselves over the common good, it means that they are no longer working with integrities. Okay, they are no longer working in doing their job. Okay, so these are the risks of conflict of interest lah, because the people in the government, especially, they do have this kind of what do we call privilege. We do have inside information that we cannot share, and then some people, for example, in the procurement or in the upper management, they have information about contracts. So sometimes we do have information about the contracts, and if we give the information towards our family or friends, so that one is conflict of interest also, even though it is not for ourselves, but it's for our friends or for our family. It's actually conflict of interest. Official decision making, especially in terms of management, like for example in your ITM, okay, every semester we will have these lectures, especially we do know your results after the examination, but we cannot actually expose the result before the Senate make decision and before it's been given to you guys. So that one official decision making. If any of us, which is the lecturers or even the HCA staff, give the information, that one already fall under the conflict of interest. And policy advising. So this one is for the top management, especially if we make a policy that actually is better for us, our own self. So that one also. Okay. So these are the things that could be what we call consider as conflict of interest. Right. So the last one is actually the strategies. Strategies how to solve the conflict of interest or how to solve ethical dilemmas in public administration. So this one is recommended by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. I think there are six. There are six. Alhamdulillah. There are six of them. So the first one is management policy procedures and practices should promote ethical conduct. So this one, actually you have learned about these things on how to be ethical in chapter 4. So it's just, I don't know, what is it? For me, this is the same thing lah. So the organization must actually have the rules and regulations so that they know the people that are working in the organization, they know what they can do and what they cannot do in terms of being ethical. So this is the rule based lah. Okay. And the second one is public service condition and management of human resource. So the first one is focusing on the policies, procedures, and practices. The second one is focusing on human resource itself. Okay, so for example, in terms of if you remember in chapter 4 or chapter 3, there are certain people that being rewarded. For example, they are able to get contract through unethical manner. So when they get the contract through unethical manner, they will be promoted, for example. So that one is unethical. So in order to promote this ethical in public service, the human resource must play is its role also. Okay, so in terms of careers, in terms of personal development, remuneration, okay, the management policy, okay, everything must must support the ethical decision making. So if they know that somebody is actually not that ethical in doing their job, okay, lazy or skip work or whatever, they shouldn't actually have the opportunity to be, let's say, for example, to be promoted in their career. Right. Next one is accountability mechanism. Accountability is everyone has their own position or job description. Okay. So for example, like in Hal Ehwal Academic, who is the clerk for FSPPP. We have our own clerk for FSPPP, who is the clerk for business management. Okay, so those clerks are answerable to the KPP. Okay, so if they are not doing their job properly, so they should be accountable. Okay, and it goes the same generally with the public servants as a whole. Everyone has their own position, and they need to do their job accordingly. Okay, and then the most important part for you guys lah, for HEA too, the HEA also need to be accountable towards the public. So the public too, you guys also part of the public, which is the students of your ITM, so they need to be accountable to you also. That's why if you are using public service, you need to ask the name of the officer. If you call an organization public service, any organization, you should ask for their name. Okay, because later if the information given is wrong, or they refuse to actually uh, manage any issues that you raise, you can report them. Okay, can you understand that? That one is accountability. When doing our job, we need to do it accordingly. And that's why it is important to know who, if you are talking with someone, you need to know their names because of the accountability in public service. Okay? And then the next one is appropriate procedure and sanction. Yang ini, kalau we already have rules and regulation in the first one just now. So if any of those rules and regulation are being disobeyed, broken by the public service, they need to be given sanction. Okay, so however, in terms of doing the sanction also, in order to be ethical, they need to do investigation first. Okay, they need to do investigation first. Then they can give the appropriate sanction. For public service, especially specifically UITM for lecturers. For lecturers, there are several sanctions if the lecturers are not doing their job properly. Okay, and then we call it not only lecturers lah in public service. We call it as the exit policy. Exit policy too is when the public service no longer doing their job. But for public service in Malaysia, it's very good lah because they giving not appropriate lah. It's a very long time. Within 3 years. Within 3 years. After 3 years, there is no improvement. Then they will be dismissed from public service. Okay. Now, next one, in order to be ethical, the decision making process should be transparent on and open to scrutiny. So here it means that's why if you take a look at the decision making in the parliament, especially because it involves the whole Malaysia, the policy will be broadcast whether it is written or even in the televisions or social media. Okay, the reason for it is because we need to know how do they end up making that decisions. That's why if for the parliament, what do we call parliament debate though in parliament, you can actually view the debate, the process itself. And open to scrutiny, it means that we can criticize whatever decision that they make. Okay, that because we are the democratic country. Okay, so therefore that's why people, especially in terms of the government, in terms of the federal levelly, we can actually uh, take a look at their decision. How do they make that process? How do they make their decisions? And we can criticize them. And then public servants should know their rights and obligation when exposing wrong. So this one is actually in your chapter 4 also. Okay, so which is the whistleblowing too. So this one is important because if the people that are working with the government do not expose whoever that is doing the wrong thing, it is impossible for the upper management to know what is happening. Okay, especially in terms of operationally. So, so those people that want to report any wrongdoings, they should know whom they report to. Okay, to whom they report to. And if, let's say, for example, the one that doing the unethical problems or unethical issue is their superior, okay, like for me myself, like for example, the one that being ethical is KPP. So I cannot complain to KPP that she is doing any unethical manners. So I need to report to whom? I need to know the chain of command. So my chain of command, if I want to report KPP, I need to report to the Deputy Rector HA. Okay, that one is chain of command. So we need to know to whom that we can report if any ethical issues happen in the organization itself. And of course, the most important part in Malaysia also, we have this whistleblowing regulation whereby if I myself decided to report my KPP to the Timbalan Rector, so Timbalan Rector will ensure that I will not be exposed, my name will not be given to the KPP. This is example to the KPP whereby I report her. Okay, is that clear? I can hear. Okay, is that clear? Right. So as you can see, in terms of being ethical, the rules and regulations, the management, the HR, they all play important roles, and of course, the people, which is the people who are working in the organization, also play its important role in contributing to the complaint of unethical issues or manners in the organization. Okay, so that is your chapter 6. Right. Government. Government is it the same things as governance? Is it? What is government? What is government? What is government? What is government? Government. Can you define what is government? Government. Government. What is government? Okay, good. Now, let me tell you how to define. If you are being asked to define, you cannot say government. This one is not that correct. Not that correct. I don't say that it is wrong, but it is not that correct. Okay. If somebody who doesn't have any political background or public administration background, if they ask you what is government, you cannot use the words govern or government to explain it. You need to explain it differently. Okay, one of your friends mentioned here people that govern. Okay, so you still would use the word govern. You still the word you you use the word govern, so it's not that correct. You should replace it with something that show what is government. Okay, because government comes from the word govern. So if people ask you what is govern, then okay. So in here, some of you answer the one that manage. Okay, or you can say someone group of people that have authority to make decision for the countries, for the whole countries, whether in politics, economics, social. Okay, so the government is referring to a group of people that is sovereign, has authority and legitimacy to make decision for the whole country. Okay, you cannot use the word govern again yet because people will ask you again what is govern then. Okay, so you use the layman term unless you are talking with someone with a background of politics. They will know lah what does it mean by govern. Okay, it's actually a group of people that has authority, legitimacy, sovereignty to make decisions for the whole country, and the country and the people in the country needs to listen to this group of people. That one is government. Okay, so for your level, it's actually referring to the group of people that has authority to make decision in the country. Okay, now that one is government. Okay, governance is different. Governance is a process. It's a process. Okay, let's take a look at it later. So you must remember this because some students, even though they are in degrees, they still cannot. You learn this in DPA. You also learn this in semester 3, if I'm not mistaken. Good governance. Okay. So these are the subtopics that you need to understand at the end of this chapter. So the concept of good governance, the pillars, there are 8 pillars. The public and private governance issue. Okay, for the public and private governance issue, I will not touch much on that. Okay, and then importance of good governance and challenges of good governance. Okay, usually for this chapter, they will ask you about issues. Okay, there are a few times that they ask about importance and challenges, and sometimes they ask one of the pillars. Okay, one of the pillars, and you need to explain public issues from one of the pillars. Okay, right. So I mentioned to you earlier, it is actually referring to the process. Okay, so what process then? Governance is referring to the process of decision making, and in this type of process, in doing this process, it doesn't mean that they're going to apply the decision. So any process that involving decision making that involve the actors, informal and formal actors. And this decision can be implemented or sometimes they will not be implemented. Okay? There are two important aspects here. It is referring to the process and it involves actors. Okay? It involves actors. So these actors could be formal and informal. Okay, as you know, in government, usually we within the country itself we have 3 level of government. Okay, 3 level of government, and sometimes in good governance we also make decisions that will affect the international level, especially in terms of national actor. Multinational actor tu contoh multinational corporation. Okay, so it means there going to be two actors: formal actors, informal actors. Okay, actors ni is referring to those people that affected by the decision making. Okay, governance is a process of a decision making, whether it can be implemented and it will not be implemented. And in this process, it involves actors. Okay, the actors could be in the three level of government or even in the multinational, international. Okay, and then these actors could be formal and informal. Okay, why are they called actors? They are being called actors is because they will be affected by this decision making. So it means whenever the government wants to make a policy, this policy will affect several actors, especially the informal actors. Formal actors usually are referring to the government, and informal actors could be referring to many parties. It could be the media, which in the good governance they need to have the transparency. It could be the let's say for example, if the policy is about agriculture. So if the policy is about agriculture, it could involve the farmers. It could involve the companies who are making apa nama racun tu, pesticide and fertilizer. Okay, that one is informal actors. It could involve the people, uh, the kampung people, rural people, because it is referring to agriculture. Or it could involve the environmental NGOs, because agriculture could be affecting the environment. Okay, and in some aspect it could involve animals right also. So the informal actors, they're going to be many of them. It depends on what kind of policy that the government wants to make. So the actors is usually the parliament lah, the parliament and the ministries or the agencies, the government agencies that involved. So these two actors going to be involved in the decision making. So that is good governance. Is it? You understand that? So the actors will be depend lah. It depends on what kind of policy that they want to make. Later in the slides, you're going to see there are cases whereby it involves MRT. So that one who involved in it. Okay. Are you guys here? You still here? Can you understand that? Wait, yang informal actors siapa yang terlibat? Informal actors are usually the people lah. Informal actors usually the people. The people. Like I mentioned just now, if the policy is about agriculture, so who involved in agriculture? The farmers, the supplier for machineries for the farmers, the supplier for fertilizer and poison. Is it they call poison? Pembekal racun dan baja. It could involve pembekal anak-anak pokok. It could involve people. Kalau contoh, the agriculture policy is on padi. Padi, what is it called in English? Padi lah. Can you understand that, Shumaila? It is referring to the people. Kalau formal tu, it's the government. Okay, the government, especially, and then formal actors also, especially in the good governance, is the media. Media playing a very important role in good governance. Did you get that, Shumaila? Okay, please, and then of course informal actors also, like I mentioned, could be involved in the also. Okay. Now, other than okay, so the important aspect in good governance, there are two, which is the definition and the pillars. As long as you understand the definition and the pillars, any issue you can relate it with good governance. Any issue you can relate it with good governance. So there are 8 pillars for it. We'll take 10 minutes before we proceed. I'm gonna go to the good governance pillars later. 10 minutes. Right. So you guys here?
Yes, madam.
Are you here?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Okay. Power on. X mode. Now let's proceed. Okay. So there are three more, which are the pillars, the importance, as well as the challenges. Now let's take a look at the 8 pillars of good governance, 8 major characteristics of good governance. Right. So the first one is it's already been mentioned in the definition itself, whereby this good governance it involves the people that affected by the decision making. So of course the first pillar is the participatory. Okay, so participatory it could be participation by the people directly, or it could be through representative. Okay, and then for Malaysia, we do have this good governance whereby we have these members of parliament, or even in the state level, we have the Dewan Undangan Negeri, whereby each of the constituency is represented by our own representative. And then sometimes also this participatory, especially in the local government level, the people in the local government itself can be involved directly in giving opinion, for example. So in the local government level, but for the state and federal level, usually we will be represented by our representative. But of course, is if as you can see nowadays in terms of democracy in Malaysia, in terms of participatory, we also you guys also can join or participate in the decision making in the government by giving opinion, whether it is through writing through newspaper, or even for ourselves, for the academician, we can use the academic writing. And for you guys, for the layman people, it's basically you can go for social media. You can go for social media, and they will try to listen to you guys. Okay, so that one is the participatory. The second one is consensus oriented. So it's related with the participatory just now. In making a decision or making a policy for the people, of course, the government cannot making a policy yang shock sendiri, because if they shock sendiri, the policy will not be supported by the people. So they need to have consensus. Okay, what consensus is different from majority voice. Consensus is different from majority voice because in terms of consensus, the government will try to listen to every actors. They try to listen to every actors that involved in that policy, and then they will come out with a consensus, with a decision making that came from each of the actors that involved. Meanwhile, for majority voice, it's actually they don't really care about the minority. So who whoever that has the largest voice will win in majority. But in consensus, they will take every each of the opinion of the people or the actors that involved in the in the policy itself. Okay, so the reason why consensus oriented is important is because the government needs to listen to the people that involved, because like for example, if the decision making is made in Sabah, the opinion of people of Sabah might be different from people in Semenanjung Malaysia. So if the state government wants to make a policy for the state of Sabah, they need to have the voice from the state of Sabah. Okay, they cannot just simply take the decision making that already being made in Semenanjung Malaysia, because it's different. Okay. Mm, Do you know the what do we call project of TAED, Tanjung Aru Eco Development Project? Do you know that Tanjung Aru Eco Development Project, TAED, TAED? Ada siapa tahu? Semua tidak tahu, tidak pernah dengar. Okay. Right. So TAED is actually a state project, yeah, state project that initiated by our former Chief Minister Datuk Sri Musa Aman. So TAED is located in Tanjung Aru. If you go to Tanjung Aru Beach now, you see that every what do we call building there near the Tanjung Aru Beach already being destroyed, isn't it? We don't no longer have the. Okay, so we no longer have the sugar barn. We no longer have the building whereby the uh, peniaga-peniaga whereby they jual jeruk apa semua tu, they've been moved to Teluk Likas. Okay, so the people in Teluk Likas, they used to be in Tanjung Aru. Okay, and then one of the park there, we call it as Philip Park. Okay, Tanjung Aru is a public space. Okay, Tanjung Aru is a public space whereby it belongs to the people of Kota Kinabalu. Okay, so the one that responsible in Tanjung Aru is the DBKK. Okay, the Dewan Bandaraya Kota Kinabalu. So what supposed to be done by DBKK is to manage the Tanjung Aru Beach. If you take Tanjung Aru Beach has been there for a very long time already, and people used to go there to I don't know to enjoy themselves, to socialize, to have activities with their friends, families, okay, to enjoy the sunset or whatever it is. So the BTBKK provided the facilities, toilet, parking space. Okay, they need to beautify the Tanjung Aru. Okay, so that one is Tanjung Aru. Right, and then came to Musa Aman. Dato Musa Aman decided to actually make a project, a capitalist project. A capitalist project, it means that Tanjung Aru will be no longer under the DBKK authority, and the Tanjung Aru will become a capitalist space whereby people, if they want to go to Tanjung Aru, they need to have permission and they need to pay. Okay, so TAED is about a project whereby they want to build a hotel as well as golf course. Okay, golf course. So, one example of the project is the Sutra Harbor. Sutra Harbor is a capitalist project. Okay, the government cannot simply take a public space. They cannot simply take a public space like the beach itself. Okay, if they want to make a development, especially the capitalist development there, they need to have permissions from the people of Kota Kinabalu. Okay, so it's related with good governance in terms of consent, participate, all the eight pillars. Okay, so when the government of Sabah decided to do the TAED, they need to have opinion of the people of Sabah, specifically people of Kota Kinabalu. So what's done by the DBKK, especially in order for them to turn a public space into a commercial space, they need to have consensus from the Kota Kinabalu people. So you guys didn't know. Maybe you are not aware about this. Or maybe you just go to Tanjung and accept everything. So during the consensus oriented, the DBKK made what do you call is it an exhibition about the planning of the Taet itself. So during the this one, they actually have the elements of transparency also, and as well as accountable and the others. Okay, so in terms of consensus oriented, people that involved is basically because they try to destroy or they try to relocate the Sekolah Tanjung Aru. They try to relocate Sekolah Tengah because it will involve the public space in the Sekolah Tengah. So people, especially in education, they disagreed about that. And then the second part of the Taet itself is because if they do the Taet too, it will change the geographical aspect of Tanjung Aru and it will create more pollution than now. If you go to Tanjung Aru, there are pollutions. There are the beach in Tanjung Aru it's polluted. Okay, it's polluted. So if there will be more pollution and there will be changes in terms of the geography of the Tanjung Aru itself. And for your information, in Tanjung Aru, there are many species of birds. There are many species of birds that came to Tanjung Aru to actually lay eggs or whatever, especially in the Phillip Park, especially along the coastline. There are trees over there, kan? Yang dekat-dekat orang jual-jual tu. So it used to be places whereby birds actually came to lay eggs. And one of the species that came there was hornbill. You know what is hornbill? Hornbill belongs to the Borneo, the island of Borneo. So it's only available in Sarawak, especially, and in Kalimantan. However, some of them managed to migrate to Sabah. And then they actually did went to Tanjung Aru and there were two birds, and then there is what they managed to have one one baby lah. Okay, but when Tanjung Aru eco development started, every birds actually the birds are not there anymore. Sebab habis pokok kena tebang apa semua. Then of course there are so many consequences of that. So people around, in terms of that affected by this taet, they came and then they go to the BKK, they make awareness or whatever it is, they make protest and whatever it is. So that one is consensus oriented. And at the end of it, when Warisan took over, they said Warisan is basically Datuk Shafi Abdal. So when Warisan said that they're not gonna proceed with the Taed at first, and then when they took over, they said they will proceed. So when itu Pribumi also took the Sabah also, they also said that they're gonna proceed with the uh, plan, but there will be changes according to the consensus that given by the people that affected. So during these exhibitions of the Taet also, they inform about what are the companies that involved. So this one is accountable. So companies that involved in the development of the Taet itself, the state government, and then the companies that involved is actually a companies from China, the state of China. Okay, so it's already been decided even from the beginning, from the Dato' Musaman already. So this one is accountability. So we know that who are the people that responsible in this project. Okay, right. So accountability is related with the transparencies, because if we do not know who are the one that making the decisions, who are involved in the decision, we will not know who is supposed to be responsible if anything happen about the policy or about the program. So therefore, in terms of accountability, they need to follow the rule of law and they need to have the transparency also. Okay. So transparency is there are two lah. Transparencies is in terms of enforcement. In transparencies, they need to go according to the rules and regulation. That's why in terms of taet, in order to fulfill the good governance, the DBKK held several meetings for the Taed. Okay, that one is transparency because one of the rules and regulations to open up a public space for a commercial space is they need to get permission from people of KK, which is Tanjung Aru belongs to the people of KK. So only some of we, I don't know, even you guys yourself, you do not know anything about the Taed. So only some people of KK that aware about this development go and go and view the plan or whatever and giving opinion about the plan because that is one of the rules and regulation. In order to make public space a commercial place, they need to go and do a memorandum and they need to lay down the plan so that people will know. And of course, one of the consequences of Taet, other than the just the environmental aspect, it will become like Sutra Harbor. Sutra Harbor, when they did the project, Sutra Harbor, it used to be a public space, yeah, a public space. So Sutra Harbor promised that they will open a public space whereby people of Kota Kinabalu will be able to access to Sutra Harbor, especially the beach. However, of course, if you see now, in terms of Sutra Harbor, you need to go through the security. So that one is already breaching lah. So they didn't go according to whatever they promised to the people of Kota Kinabalu. And the reason why is because people of Kota Kinabalu do not care. You do not care about any of this. So that's why you guys are being used by the capitalists because you don't really care, you don't really know. Okay? Now, so that one is transparent, which is they need to go according to rules and regulation. And the next one, of course, they need to give the information to the people, just like what. So in terms of transparency, this is when the media plays its role, whereby the government needs to give the information to the media so that the media will broadcast the information. That's why media is one of the important actor in good governance. Right, the next one is responsive. Okay, responsive is the government is trying their best lah in terms of responsiveness. Okay, usually if you take a look at the project here in Sepanggar, usually they're gonna have a billboard whereby they will inform us one of the transparency and accountability project oleh siapa buat tu? Project Jalan Raya. Sekarang do you know? It's I think it's from Semenanjung Malaysia. So they will inform the company that doing the project and then responsiveness. They will inform you how long it will take to actually complete the project. That one. And of course, if you go to the government agencies now, they will inform you. Okay, these are the processes that you're gonna go through, and how long will you have to wait? Maybe 1 hour, 3 hours, 1 week. It depends. Okay, and effective and efficient is okay. There are two here in terms of effective and efficient, the decision making must produce the best outcome for the society. That one. It must produce the best outcome, which is utilitarianism. But the second aspect is in terms of government, they need to ensure the resources are not being apa dipanggil membazir tu. Apa membazir bahasa English? Okay.
Ways.
Yeah, they must make sure, thank you, they must make sure the resources that being used for that decision making or for that project is not wasting the people's money. Okay, kalau kamu nampak ada a few months ago satu jambatan in Sarawak. Is it jambatan lah di kampung. Dia punya cost is 50,000. Tapi dia punya structure macam, I don't know, is it 500 gitu. So that one is very bad. Okay. And equitable and inclusive. Okay. Equitable and inclusively, it's related with the consensus just now because everyone that affected by this program will be involved in that decision making. That's why even in the NGOs, in terms of just now, in terms of environment, in terms of education, which is the school, in terms of animals rights, also they involve. Okay, pollution, whatever it is, everyone is involved in the decision making of the taet itself. Okay, when the government open up about the taet, and then it must follow the rule of law. So every process must be according to the law existed in the country. Yeah, this one is not involved in your syllabus. Huh? You only learn about good governance because later the issues are on good governance also. Okay, approaches. I don't think approaches is involved. Public and private also not involved. All right, so this one is importance. When you study later, you need to check your scheme of work. Okay, you need to check your scheme of work so that you don't study everything and it is according to your syllabus. So this is the importance of good governance. Of course, if you involve people in making decision, people are being heard. Of course, the people know what the government is doing, where the money comes from, where will the money be spent. Okay, because that is the most important aspect in ethical decision making, whereby people trust and the resources are the most important one. We don't want that our resources are being used by the politician or by the government just like that. They're not going to be waste. So if they use the good governance, it will promote the community confidence because we know what the government is doing. Okay, we know what the government is doing, and we can what do we call give criticism, or we can do we can scrutinize the government's decisions. Just like Pact is now, even though it's a decision by the government, but everyone, which is the NGOs, the people of Kota Kinabalu, also involved. So therefore, people will feel confidence that the government is actually doing a project for the sake of the people, not only for the sake of the government itself. Okay, of course, Dr. Habibie said that they're still going to proceed with the TAET is because the TAET will give more opportunity in terms of economic and in terms of employment. Okay, the next one, it leads to a better decision. So the reason why it leads to a better decision is because sometimes not everything that done by the government, they know. I mean, not every government people actually know what they are doing. So they need to listen to others also, especially the people that involved. Okay, and then if in terms of making policy, usually they will make research also. But of course, if it involves NGOs usually they will have their own field of interest and they can give more information about that policy to the government, especially in terms of how to even improve the policy itself. And then, of course, in Malaysia, especially in terms of our good governance, the government do allow the people to actually have criticism, have debate on whether that project is a good project or not. Okay, so of course, some most of the time, if you do a debate, you actually want to reach a better decision lah. Usually, okay, not to win, but you want to come out with a better decision. And next one is it supports the ethical decision making. Okay, it supports the ethical decision making because you go back. What is ethical decision making in public administration? Ethical decision making in public administration usually it satisfy or it focus on giving the people what they want. Okay, because that is the right thing to do in public administration. So if the good governance are being done truly, which is through the pillars just now. Okay, so we can see that the government is trying to do the right thing for the people. And of course, this one is participation. Participation, participation just like the first, all of the three just now is there are many advantage of the participation, but of course in democracy, people's participation is the most important aspect. Okay, and then of course in this good governance also we must understand that democracy and good governance might be different from one another. Democracy usually it involves majority voice. So in the parliament itself, it will only hear the voice of the majority. But in the good governance, yeah, in the good governance, as you can see in the pillars itself, one of the pillars is inclusiveness. So inclusiveness, it will allow even the minority to be involved in the participation. So good governance is much better than the concept of democracy itself because it doesn't only involve the majority. It involves everyone that are affected by the policy. So that is people's participation. Okay, is that clear? Ano sudah ya Allah?
Yes,
Right.
yes, madam.
Easy, isn't it? Sangat mudah. Okay. Tapi the trickiest part is in terms of good governance ni, you need to understand the eight pillars. Okay, because later they're gonna, if you are lucky, they're gonna ask you about a case. They're gonna ask you case on good governance. A case of good governance, you can get a case like, for example, in terms of Jabatan Air. Jabatan Air Sabah. It is a problems of governance because in Jabatan Air tu, we know that people in Sabah, we are experiencing the water supply problem, the water supply problem. And in terms of good governance, people are participated in voicing out their opinion, their concern about air, water in Sabah. However, the case of Jabatan Air, it shows that even though the government is trying to uh, handle or solve the water problem in Sabah, but we do not know what is going on in Jabatan Air. Kita tidak tahu projek-projek dorong buat tu apa sebenarnya. Sepatutnya dorong bagi tahu lah projek yang dorong buat. Okay, tapi sebab itulah dia ada masalah governance di sana. Okay, when they have the governance problems, there is no transparency. We do not know what are their planning. Okay, and then we do not. I bet you guys also are not that aware about the pengarah tu. Okay, so when this happen, there is no transparency, especially there is no accountability. So that's why it is easy to do the corruption. So it's related with the good governance itself. So it means you relate with one or two or three of the pillar, okay, pillar, and then sometimes they will just come up with transparency. It depends lah on the resource person. Okay, alright now. Tadi tu jabatan air kan, we're gonna see later here. Here. 5 challenges to good governance. No, is it five? Well, let's see how many. Challenges to good governance. Democracy is supposed to allow good governance, supposedly. However, in a developing countries like ourselves, okay, Malaysia, it's not only in Egypt, Morocco, Lebanon, and Palestine, but Malaysia, we are also experiencing this, okay? And it's up to you to answer it truly, lah, okay? One of the challenge is the well-established nature of corruption. Sometimes in this developing country, they got confused. They got confused whether something is an activity is a corruption or not. Like for example, if you are being held by the traffic, and then the traffic said, Magistrat, my friend actually experienced it. Kasih reload saya RM50. Saya tidak saman kalau kamu kasih reload saya RM50. So my friend did that lah. That one is corruption, even in the lowest level. So good governance, especially in the upper level. So if even in the lowest level pun begitu, apalagi yang di atas. It's not a normal thing. Corruption is a normal thing. Excuse me, what is this? Okay, so corruption though, it's already become a norm for the people. And then next one is in terms of nepotism. Nepotism ni is I mentioned a few cases whereby companies, the GLC belongs to a family, and then semua the CEO, CFO, the executive, semua adalah ahli keluarga, sanak saudara, kawan-kawan. So if that happen, if they do audit is for transparency, to see whether they are doing they are using the resources properly or not, especially in the GLC. So if yang semua tu management tu adalah sanak saudara, kawan rapat, rakan taulan, so this one is nepotism. If you go to the GLC for Sabah, especially Sabah punya company, every one of them are political appointed. So it is nepotism. Okay, so it will not allow good governance, because good governance, they're gonna have transparency, accountability. So if they did not use the resources properly, they will ask their people to adjust the audit. Audit itu penting juga. That's why if you read the cases of nanti later you see the cases too, when they did audit tu semua okay, sebab orang tidak jujur. Okay, next one is lack of cooperation. Main actor I mentioned to you earlier is referring to the government. So the government could be in terms of the ministry and the agency, the department. Okay. Sabah ni, we have problems in terms of water, electricity, and then tiba-tiba dia mau buat LRT. Kan, pernah dengar? Hmm? Pernah dengar kita punya ahli-ahli politik cakap dorang mau buat LRT di Sabah?
Pernah
Pernah
miss.
tidak? Ha. Okay. So dorang mau buat LRT, but when we talk about the problems of the road, okay, when we talk about or when we complain about the problem of the road, especially sana yang mau pergi Tawau, mau pergi Sandakan, apa jawapan dorang? Apa Bu Mukhtar cakap? Bu Mukhtar cakap apa? Bila kita komplain pasal jalan raya. Ha? Dia itu menteri Kementerian Jabatan Kerja Raya. Director dia cakap belum ada budget. Dia cakap itu bukan dia punya bidang kuasa. Macam-macam lah dia cakap. JKR. La ilaha illallah. He comment on Facebook. Yeah. So macam-macam. And then one of the points he made also itu adalah kerja kerajaan persekutuan. So macam-macam they give many excuses. So here it means the main actors itself they do not solve the problems. Dia tendang-tendang itu masalah. Dia tendang-tendang masalah tu. Dia tidak mau selesai. Is not being accountable towards it. Okay, so this is the lack of cooperation. Supposedly, when it comes to development, the federal government and the state government they need to work together. They need to work together, and then the federal government, which is kalau federal government ni dia punya projek tu adalah Pen Borneo tu. Dulu dia under state government, tapi state government ni bila they took over the new government, dorang bergaduh-gaduh lagi sama dorang. So the federal government took over. So there is no cooperation. No lah. I don't know what is wrong with these people. So there are lack of cooperation among the actors. So yang sengsara is basically the people. So that's why good governance cannot be applied because I don't know why are they there. Is it because of the people or is it because of the money? Okay. So, okay. Now, the third one is incomplete integrity system. Okay, incompletely, it means that we do not have any agency, which is independent agencies, to watch the governance of the government, okay, or to watch the corruption of the government. For Malaysia, we do have it. Okay, there are many agencies, and of course, the one that you have learned also is the MACC. Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. Okay, we do have them. But sometimes the power is limited. Sometimes the power is limited. Okay, that is the first one lah. In terms of the watchdog, which is the MACCE, the MACCA, they exist, but the power is limited because at the end of it, the power to prosecute is not MACC. The power to prosecute is the Attorney General. Attorney General is appointed by the Prime Minister. So usually kalau Prime Minister dia banyak case, dia akan buang itu Attorney General. Next one is political interference. Okay, so here it means we do have watchdog, but there are political interference. Maksudnya ada sajalah itu MACC, sorry, but even their hands are tightly tied by the politician. Okay, kalau in this aspect, so Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, the worst thing in Malaysia is even the top management of the MACC is corrupted. So kalau top management is corrupted, of course that top management are influenced by the politician. So if your top management is corrupted, even though how ethical or how much integrity the officer, I'm talking about officer, the implementer, doesn't matter like they are ethical or they have high integrity, but when the case come to the top and the top is corrupted, the case will go away. Okay, that's why if you take a look at the issues in Malaysia ni, kalau isu politician, menteri apa semua tu, usually they will just let go the issue just like that. Okay? Okay, so the issue. So here it means, okay, there is implementation gap between legal reform and institutional practice. Legal reform is referring to the legislative law. They have legislation, they make law to ensure anti-corruption. Okay, they make law to ensure anti-corruption. But when it comes to the implementation, it is not being implemented truly or in a just manner. Okay, you see the cases for corruption in Malaysia, usually they're gonna catch the small people. Ya, cikgu, penjawat awam, tapi yang kes-kes billion ringgit, million ringgit, billion lah especially, it will pass the judiciary. They will not be convicted. Okay, even if they are convicted, they still going to be roaming free. Ada kes yang orang sudah convicted tapi masih lagi dia berlegar-legar di parlimen, menjadi member of parlimen. Ada kamu tahu? Dah tahu? Tahu kan tahu? Tahu tahu kan dah tahu. Kes ni. Ha? Dia satu dah tahu, ya Allah, ya Allah. Datuk Sri Najib already convicted under criminal and corruption. Astagfirullah. Kes-kes begini yang dah tahu. On MDB tu sudah convicted tapi still lagi member of parliament, belum lagi di penjara sampai sekarang. Zahid Amidi. Okay? Still under trial tapi boleh ke sana kemari. Satu lagi kes Sabah. Musa Aman. 63 cases drop. 63 ya. So many cases that drop in one go. So it means here we have law, but when it comes to implementation, especially in terms of the politician, there is no implementation. So that is what it means by implementation gap between legal reform and institutional practice. Okay? Kamu dah tahu kes-kes korup. Right? So those are your chapter 7. The definition, which is the concept, the 8 pillars, the importance, and the challenges. Okay? So next week, inshallah, we're going to go for chapter 7, 8. We're going to go for chapter 8. Okay? Right, so it's part 352 already, so I think we should end the class here lah. Okay?
Thank you, Madam.
Okay, so group 1 will continue the tutorial using the same Google Meet link last week. Okay, thank you very much.